Have you ever wondered why anger feels like a fire that does not burn the world around you, but instead consumes you from within? The face grows hot, the pulse surges, the mind grows narrow, and words leap forth like arrows loosed without aim. A single careless spark can ignite years of regret. And yet, for all its violence, anger is not power. It is slavery. It binds the soul to the most fleeting insult, to the careless glance of a stranger, to the disobedience of a child, to the imagined slight of a lover. What appears as strength is only loss of control. The Stoics knew this well, and their wisdom whispers across centuries. He who masters his temper masters himself. To understand this, picture the man who walks calmly through chaos. The market erupts with noise, merchants quarrel, a thief darts past. Shouts rise and fists clench, but his step is measured, his face unmoved. He is not numb nor indifferent, but sovereign. Inside him, there is a citadel. No insult can breach, no storm can rattle. This is not passivity, but discipline, the highest form of command, for the battlefield of the mind is greater than any war fought in open fields. The ancients compared anger to temporary madness, and modern psychology confirms what Marcus Aurelius intuited. When the mind succumbs to rage, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, yields to the primal limbic fire. In that moment, a man is not himself, but a creature dragged by instinct. Yet, unlike the beasts, he has the capacity to step back, to see the flame before it consumes him. Here is the paradox. Anger often disguises itself as protection. It claims to shield your pride, to guard your dignity, to avenge your suffering. But what does it truly protect? At its root lies fear. Fear of being overlooked, fear of being disrespected, fear of losing control. The furious outburst is the ego's desperate cry for recognition. When you shout at a lover, slam the door, curse the driver on the road, it is not strength you display, but your wound. The Stoics knew that only the unsteady man clings to such outbursts. Seneca wrote that anger does not correct, it only punishes. It does not heal, it only deepens the cut. Jung would add that anger is often the shadow projected outward, a disowned part of the self mirrored in another. You rage not at them, but at the reflection of your own weakness you cannot yet accept. Pause and ask yourself, how many times has anger given you victory? Did it win the respect you demanded? Did it soothe the humiliation you felt? Or did it scatter trust, damage bonds, and leave silence in its wake? Consider the quiet strength of those who do not lash out, who respond to insult with composure. People may fear the hot-tempered man, but they trust the calm one. Authority flows to the steady hand, not the trembling fist. In relationships, too, the partner who cannot be provoked into fury holds a magnetic power, because their emotions are not hostage to another's whims. Anger, then, is not a weapon but a leash, and you wear it around your own neck. Yet control is not suppression. To bury anger, to deny it, is merely to turn it inward until it festers into resentment or self-hatred. The Stoic way is not to erase the feeling, but to confront it with reason and clarity. Imagine anger as a messenger bursting into the throne room of your mind. You do not execute him on sight, nor let him seize the crown. You let him speak his warning. You feel wronged, you feel threatened, and then you dismiss him, thanking him for the signal, but refusing his command. In that space between stimulus and response lies the very essence of freedom. Psychology today calls this cognitive reappraisal. The Stoics called it philosophy in action. You can step outside the fire, Look down upon it from above and choose. The true challenge is in the heat of the moment. When the insult stings, when the child disobeys again, when your patience runs thin. This is where training matters. Just as soldiers drill endlessly to remain steady under attack, the Stoic trains his perception daily. He reminds himself in the morning, "Today I will meet arrogance, deceit, disrespect." If he expects it, he cannot be surprised. He rehearses in imagination the insults he might endure, the setbacks that may come. By the time reality delivers them, he has already borne them in his mind, and they lose their power. This is not pessimism, it is preparation. You too can rehearse, can armor your spirit in advance, so that when the spark comes, it finds no fuel. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. The untrained man believes his anger is natural, unavoidable, justified. Yet what is more natural than hunger? Still, he restrains himself from stealing food. What is more natural than desire? Still, he disciplines his body to fidelity. So too with anger. Natural, yes, but never inevitable. You are not the flame, you are the hand that holds the lantern. The Stoics remind us, the world may insult you, but it cannot harm you unless you grant it power. The wound of offense exists only in the mind. Take that power back, and you become untouchable. Anger is a teacher disguised as an enemy. It enters the mind suddenly, demands obedience, and tempts a man to believe that fury is strength. Yet the Stoics would remind him, no force outside of reason deserves the throne of the soul. When anger rules, dignity collapses. When reason rules, dignity is untouchable. The question is not whether anger will rise, for it always does, but whether you will kneel before it or stand above it. Imagine two men. One is praised as bold, but his boldness is a fragile shell. The moment he is contradicted, his veins throb, his words turn poisonous. His hand trembles with the urge to strike. He believes he terrifies others, but in truth, he terrifies himself. He cannot trust his own composure. The other man, silent when mocked, steady when provoked, walks as if no insult can stain him. He radiates not coldness, but command. His presence is a fortress. People lean toward him because he is unshaken, and they feel safer in his gravity. Which man would you rather be? Which man truly possesses freedom? Jung taught that what angers you most in another is often the shadow of what you despise within yourself. The brash colleague who interrupts you mirrors your own fear of being unseen. The disobedient child reflects your hidden chaos, your own unacknowledged impatience. The stubborn partner awakens the buried terror of losing control. Anger becomes the mirror you cannot bear to look into. But the Stoic takes that mirror in his hand and gazes without trembling. He does not curse the reflection. He learns from it. The insult is not the enemy, but the invitation to mastery. To walk this path, one must first disarm the belief that anger is inevitable. Most men excuse it as just how I am, but that is not truth. That is surrender. Your mind is not a cage built by instinct. It is a temple to discipline. When the flame of fury flickers, you can feed it, or you can starve it. The Stoics practiced the starving. They paused. They measured the weight of the insult against the weight of their peace, and always, peace was heavier. You too can practice this pause. Count your breath. Step back before your tongue lashes out. Look at the person before you and remind yourself, they cannot wound me unless I permit it. In that moment, you are no longer a slave. You are sovereign. Anger seduces by making you feel alive. but it costs more than it gives. It destroys trust between lovers, turning affection into fear. It poisons families, so that children walk on glass, waiting for the eruption. It corrodes workplaces, where a leader's fury shatters loyalty and breeds resentment. And within the man himself, it leaves exhaustion, guilt, and the bitter taste of words he cannot recall. Is this power? Or is this ruin disguised as passion? Think of the countless men who believed their anger made them feared, only to die alone, abandoned by those who could no longer endure the storm. The Stoic sees further. He understands that insult is wind, and he is the mountain. The wind can howl, but the mountain does not move. He trains himself daily, rehearsing adversity in imagination. Today, he tells himself, I will be tested. Today, they will try to provoke me. Today, I will meet the petty, the arrogant, the disrespectful. And when the test comes, he smiles, not because it is pleasant, but because he was ready. He carries within him the calm of a man who knew the trial would arrive. And so the flame sputters and dies, finding no fuel in his silence. This is not coldness. This is not the death of passion. It is the redirection of fire. For the same energy that could erupt in violence can be transmuted into resolve, into discipline, into creation. The Stoics were not weak men. They were generals, emperors, teachers. They fought wars, governed nations, endured exile. But their greatest victories were not won on battlefields. They were won in the private moments where anger rose and was conquered. True strength is not shown by breaking others, but by refusing to be broken by yourself. And so you must ask, will you be the man whose anger enslaves him, or the man whose calm liberates him? The world will test you again, perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow. When it does, remember, the insult is not the chain, your reaction is. And in that split second of choice, you either hand over the keys to your peace, or you guard them with unshakable resolve. Anger often masquerades as justice, but when stripped bare, it is nothing more than a child stamping its feet inside the adult body. It shouts, I deserve more. Yet it takes away more than it ever grants. The man enslaved by anger imagines himself feared, but fear does not last. Respect cannot grow in the soil of rage. What endures is only distance, silence, withdrawal. A house ruled by temper is a house filled with footsteps leaving. The Stoics taught that no external event is inherently offensive. It is your interpretation that transforms it into a wound. Modern psychology echoes this in cognitive theory. The story you tell yourself about an event determines the depth of your suffering. When someone interrupts you, you may decide they are disrespectful, and fury rises. Or you may decide they are careless, distracted, in pain themselves, and compassion softens your response. The event is the same. The meaning changes everything. In that choice lies the hidden power of perception. The one who changes the frame changes the flame. Look deeper, and you will see that anger thrives most where identity is fragile. The man uncertain of his worth cannot endure criticism, for every word feels like a verdict. The leader insecure in his authority lashes out at the smallest disobedience, for he fears exposure. The lover uncertain of being loved grows violent at imagined betrayal, for jealousy feeds on insecurity. But the man who knows his worth does not need to shout. His silence speaks louder than another's rage. He stands anchored, while the storm exhausts itself in futility around him. To master anger is not to become less human, but to become more fully human. Beasts thrash when wounded, children wail when denied. But man was given reason to rise above instinct. Each provocation is an invitation to climb, to leave the swamp of reaction and ascend the mountain of discipline. This ascent is not once, but daily. Every insult is a rung, every irritation a foothold. With each step, you become less the servant of impulse and more the architect of your own destiny. Consider how much of your life has been wasted in anger. How many nights were lost to replaying words you could not take back? How many mornings began with resentment carried over like a poison from the day before? Time is short. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each dawn, "You will not live 1,000 years. Therefore, use this day wisely." And yet, how often do men squander their limited hours on arguments that lead nowhere, on outbursts that hollow their strength? To give your anger time is to give it your life. What price could be higher? And yet, anger can be transmuted. The Stoics did not call for numbness, but for redirection. Fire, when uncontrolled, destroys, but when contained, it heats, it forges, it illuminates. The same energy that could erupt in violence can fuel your discipline, your perseverance, your fight for justice without hatred. The key is mastery, not suppression. Suppression buries anger alive, where it grows in silence until it erupts again, sharper and more destructive. Mastery acknowledges the flame, studies it, then bends it toward the good. You do not silence your anger. You instruct it. You make it your servant, not your king. Imagine, then, how different life becomes for the one who has tamed his temper. He walks into conflict not as a participant, but as an observer. He sees insults as noise, not threats. He negotiates, teaches, loves without the undercurrent of violence. Those around him relax in his presence, for they trust his composure. His enemies underestimate him, thinking him passive, until they realize that no provocation can dislodge him, and his friends hold him close, for they know his words will not wound them recklessly. This is the quiet authority the world longs for, yet few dare to cultivate. So ask yourself, what legacy will your temper leave? Will it carve scars into the hearts of those you love, or will it leave behind the memory of a man who was steady when others lost themselves? The Stoics believed the highest good was virtue, and virtue cannot grow in soil scorched by rage. To practice patience, to cultivate calm, is not weakness. It is the flowering of wisdom. Anger is the great thief of presence. It drags you from the moment you inhabit and chains you to a single offense, replayed endlessly in the theater of the mind. Hours dissolve in rehearsing comebacks, in crafting invisible arguments against phantoms who no longer stand before you. The Stoics warned that nothing steals time more cruelly than resentment. Each flare of temper is not only a rupture in the present, but a debt that must be paid in regret tomorrow. Seneca called anger brief madness. Psychology names it amygdala hijack, when the primal brain seizes the reins from reason. The furious man may strike or speak with a force he later denies, claiming he lost control. But in truth, control was not lost. It was handed over. No one seizes your mind without your consent. Even in the blaze of fury, there is a gap, a fraction of a second, where choice still lives. That fraction is your battlefield. Win it, and the fire never takes root. Lose it, and the flames consume the field of your dignity. This is why daily practice matters. No warrior sharpens his sword only on the day of battle. Likewise, you cannot expect to master temper if you have never trained when calm. The Stoic prepares through reflection. He reviews the day, asking, "Where did anger nearly master me? How could I have met it with patience?" He rehearses the insults he might face, stripping them of their sting by imagining them in advance. He anchors himself with the thought, "This man is not my enemy. My reaction is. His words cannot degrade me unless I degrade myself." Through such discipline, the battlefield is half won before the first blow. Modern psychology mirrors this wisdom with techniques of emotional regulation. Breathing slows the racing heart. Reframing shifts the meaning of offense. Mindfulness loosens the grip of reaction. Yet what the Stoics add is a grandeur of purpose. It is not merely about stress management, but about virtue itself. To control anger is not only healthier, it is nobler. It is to stand as a citizen of the cosmos, governed not by whim, but by reason. It is to refuse enslavement to passion, and instead embody sovereignty of the soul. Consider how relationships transform when anger no longer reigns. The father who shouts at his child breeds obedience out of fear, but also plants seeds of resentment that may bloom into distance years later. The father who disciplines without rage teaches respect for order without warping affection. The lover who explodes at jealousy may feel vindicated in the moment, but the trust once shattered is rarely repaired. The lover who steadies his suspicion with dialogue, who chooses composure over eruption, builds a bond that cannot be undone by shadows of doubt. Anger corrodes intimacy. Patience builds it. Even in public life, the calm man carries greater weight. In meetings, the one who shouts may seem forceful, but the one who holds his voice steady commands true authority. His restraint makes others lean closer. His patience makes allies trust that he can weather storms without losing his course. Nations themselves have fallen under leaders ruled by fury, but civilizations have endured under those who governed their own passions. If a man cannot govern himself, how can he govern others? And yet, many cling to anger as if it were armor. They believe, "If I do not show my fury, I will be walked over." But fury is not armor. It is a crack. It shows your enemy where you can be manipulated, how you can be provoked, how easily you can be broken. To remain unmoved is to become unassailable. The insult falls flat. The provocation exhausts itself. The opponent, deprived of your reaction, stands revealed in their own pettiness. The true warrior is not the one who swings wildly at every taunt, but the one whose silence unnerves even the loudest challenger. So the choice remains. Will you let anger steal your time, corrode your bonds, weaken your authority? Or will you take up the harder discipline to pause, to breathe, to transmute the flame into steady light? The Stoic path is not a denial of emotion, but a mastery of it, a transformation of raw heat into enduring strength. This mastery is the foundation of inner peace, the bedrock upon which no insult, no betrayal, no chaos can build its throne. Anger feeds on illusion. It convinces you that to explode is to release pressure, that to shout is to purge pain, that to strike is to regain control. But these are falsehoods. The release is temporary, and the wreckage it leaves behind is permanent. What truly happens when you lash out is not cleansing, it is scattering. You scatter trust, you scatter dignity, you scatter the quiet authority that takes years to build. The flame may subside, but the ashes remain. The Stoics warned that the greatest harm anger inflicts is not upon the target, but upon the soul of the angry man. For every time you surrender to fury, you carve grooves into your mind, habits of reaction that become harder to escape. Neuroscience confirms this. Repeated outbursts strengthen neural pathways until anger becomes automatic, triggered like lightning at the smallest spark. Yet the reverse is also true. Every moment of restraint strengthens new pathways, rewiring the brain toward calm until patience becomes the instinct and fury the stranger. Discipline, then, is not a cage, but a reshaping of your very being. This is why Marcus Aurelius urged himself to rise above insult. When others act against you, he reminded, they act according to their understanding of what is right. If they are mistaken, that is their burden, not yours. To internalize this is to see insult as ignorance, not as injury. Would you rage at a blind man for stumbling into you? Would you curse a child for mispronouncing a word? No. You would correct gently or step aside. So too with those who wound you through arrogance or deceit. They act out of blindness, not power. Their offense is a shadow on the wall. Only you decide whether to treat it as substance. Yet anger persists because it feeds on pride. Pride whispers, if you do not answer, you are weak. But Stoicism answers, true weakness is to be mastered by passion, while true strength is to be unassailable. Imagine a king who shouts at every servant's mistake, who rages at every rumor. Does he inspire fear or pity? Does he appear powerful or pitiful? Now imagine a king who listens calmly, corrects firmly, and refuses to be moved by gossip or insult. Which one commands loyalty? Which one endures in history? The difference is not in their crown, but in their composure. And here lies the deeper truth. Anger is always about the self, never the other. The driver who cuts you off does not know your name. The colleague who interrupts you may not even realize it. The partner who disappoints you does not always intend betrayal. The wound is internal, the ego screaming, I deserved better. The Stoics invite you to ask instead, why does this touch me so deeply? What fear, what insecurity, what unacknowledged shadow has been struck? In that question lies liberation. For when you name the wound, you rob it of power. Think of anger as a mirror. Each time it rises, it reflects a hidden part of yourself. Perhaps it shows your impatience, your thirst for recognition, your fear of inadequacy. The unwise man smashes the mirror in rage, but the Stoic gazes until he understands. The insult ceases to be a dagger and becomes a teacher. In this way, every provocation becomes a step toward self-mastery. The enemy you despised becomes the unwitting guide to your own growth. And what happens when you master this? You carry an aura others cannot explain. They feel it in your presence, the calm that does not waver, the silence that is not weakness, but power. Lovers find security, children find trust, allies find confidence. Even enemies hesitate, for they cannot predict or provoke you. They cannot bait you into foolishness, cannot bind you with rage. They face not a man on fire, but a mountain unmoved by storm. This is the Stoic gift, to live free of the leash of temper, to move through the world untouchable by the sparks of petty offense. You may still feel the stirrings of anger, for you are human, but they pass like clouds across the sun, noticed but powerless to eclipse your light. And in this mastery, you reclaim your time, your dignity, your peace. Anger is a storm that always promises power, but leaves only debris. Its roar feels intoxicating. Its surge feels unstoppable, but like a wave it crashes and disappears, while the wreckage lingers in the lives it touches. The Stoics warned that no external adversary can wound you as deeply as the passions you fail to master. Rage does not make you formidable. It makes you fragile. because anyone who discovers your triggers can own your spirit with a single insult. This is why the ancients spoke of the inner citadel. Imagine a fortress built not of stone, but of discipline, where no arrow of mockery or betrayal can pierce. Inside this citadel, the ruler is reason, and anger is reduced to a petitioner knocking at the gates. You may hear its voice, but you are not obliged to grant it entry. Jung might describe this fortress as the individuated self, whole and unshaken, no longer fractured by the projections of shadow or the hunger for external validation. Within such a man, there is no room for rage to dictate, only room for clarity to reign. To reach this state is to understand that anger is rarely about justice. It is about control. At its root lies the desire to bend others to your will, to demand that the world reflect your ego's image. But the Stoics insist, the world is not yours to govern. You govern only yourself. The driver will cut you off. The colleague will interrupt. The lover may misunderstand. You cannot bend them into perfection. But you can bend your own perception until offense loses its sting. In this mastery, you step outside the prison of reaction and into the freedom of choice. Think of how many rulers in history were undone not by enemies, but by their own temper. A hasty word, a reckless decree, a single uncontrolled outburst, these have toppled empires. Meanwhile, the leaders remembered with reverence were those who bore insult without flinching, who guided nations with patience rather than fury. The same principle applies in your life. The temper you unleash in a moment can burn bridges built over years, but the restraint you hold can preserve loyalty, trust, and love for a lifetime. The paradox is that restraint looks, on the surface, like doing nothing. But it is in fact the hardest action of all, the act of refusing surrender. The man who yells is predictable. The man who remains calm is mysterious and therefore powerful. His silence unsettles the aggressor because it reveals a strength they cannot provoke. His composure inspires confidence in allies because it shows he can weather storms without cracking. To remain unmoved when others expect eruption is to wield a power far greater than fury. Yet to cultivate this is no small task. Anger rises swiftly, like a spark on dry grass. The discipline required is not cultivated in the moment of fire, but in the long hours before it. The Stoic trains as an athlete does, rehearsing setbacks, practicing insults, meditating on impermanence. He reminds himself daily, the world will test me, and when it does, he is already armored. Psychology today echoes this in stress inoculation, preparing the mind for adversity so that when real adversity strikes, the heart does not collapse. Preparation is the quiet forge of resilience, and what of love, where anger wounds most deeply? Lovers often justify fury as proof of passion, as if shouting validates desire. But true love is never sharpened by rage. It is softened by patience. The partner who masters anger does not extinguish intimacy, but protects it, creating space where trust can grow unafraid. Children raised under steady hands, rather than trembling before volatile ones, carry into adulthood the assurance that love and calm can coexist. To build a family, a friendship, a bond without anger is to cultivate a garden where joy can bloom without fear of sudden frost. So you must decide, will you be the man who burns or the man who builds? Every insult, every irritation, every betrayal is an opportunity. You can hand over your peace to the provocations of others, or you can guard it as your most sacred possession. Each moment of mastery adds a stone to your citadel. Each surrender to anger removes one. And over time, the fortress either rises unshaken or crumbles into ruin. Anger is a chain that many wear proudly, mistaking its weight for armor. They imagine that to show fury is to show strength, yet in truth, each outburst reveals the weakest point of the soul. For what greater vulnerability is there than to be owned by another's words, to let a stranger's insult dictate your state of being? The Stoics remind us, a man is free, not when nothing challenges him, but when nothing masters him. Freedom begins with perception. Consider this: the insult you receive today, spoken in heat, may be forgotten by the speaker tomorrow. But if you clutch it to your heart, replaying it, watering it with resentment, you give it a life far beyond its birth. You become the gardener of your own bitterness. The Stoic rejects this. He recognizes that offense is a spark thrown against stone. It dies instantly, if not fed. Only the man who gathers kindling within himself, who insists on interpreting every slight as an attack, feels the fire consume him. Modern psychology names this rumination, the endless cycling of grievance in the mind. Studies show it deepens stress, fuels depression, and corrodes health. Yet the Stoics already knew. Resentment is self-inflicted punishment. You suffer not because the world wronged you, but because you refused to release the wrong. When you let go, you do not absolve the offender. You absolve yourself from being tethered to their act. This release does not mean passivity. The Stoic is no doormat. He confronts injustice, but he does so with clarity, not with rage. His action is deliberate, not reactive. Think of Epictetus, once a slave. He endured cruelty without hatred, and when free, he taught that no master can own the soul unless the soul consents. His life proves that dignity is possible even under chains, so long as anger does not shackle the spirit. If a man in bondage could achieve such composure, what excuse remains for those whose chains exist only in their reactions? And consider the intimacy of relationships. How many lovers have torn themselves apart, not because of betrayal, but because of the fury that followed? Anger often claims to defend love, but it is the quickest poison to it. Love cannot survive where fear takes root, and anger breeds fear more swiftly than any absence of affection. The partner who learns to master anger does not weaken passion, he strengthens it. For passion unleashed in rage is destructive. But passion disciplined into gentleness becomes irresistible. Even within the self, anger distorts the mirror of identity. Each time you surrender to rage, you reinforce the story that you are volatile, fragile, ungoverned. But each time you master it, you tell yourself another story, that you are unshakable, sovereign, the author of your own conduct. Identity is not fixed. It is written in choices. And every encounter with anger is a chance to write yourself stronger. The image of the mountain remains the most fitting. The wind rages, lightning strikes, rains fall in torrents. But the mountain does not rage back. It does not bend to storm. It endures. And in its endurance, it teaches those at its base what true majesty is. So too can you be if you choose mastery over surrender. Anger is the storm. You are the mountain. But to live this way requires vigilance. You must watch your thoughts as a guard watches the gates of a fortress. The smallest grievance can slip in unnoticed and stir rebellion inside you. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, the mind becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let anger dwell long enough, and it will paint the soul in bitterness. Let patience dwell, and it will paint the soul in peace. The choice of color is yours. Anger is the most cunning of tyrants because it convinces you that you are the master while it quietly enslaves you. Each time you let fury dictate your words, you place the reins of your dignity into the hands of others. Whoever can provoke you rules you, even if they are weaker, smaller, or more foolish than you. The Stoics insisted that freedom is not measured by external liberty, but by the sovereignty of the inner self. A man who cannot govern his temper is already conquered. This truth is visible in every sphere of life. In the home, children who grow beneath the shadow of a volatile parent learn to fear, not to trust. They tiptoe in silence, not out of respect, but out of terror. Their memories will not be of love, but of the unpredictable eruption that shattered their peace. In love, the partner who explodes in rage may believe they show passion, but what they truly show is instability. Love withers not because of lack of desire, but because of lack of safety. In leadership, the commander ruled by temper may win submission, but never loyalty. Soldiers obey out of fear, yet secretly long for another master. The calm leader, steady in judgment, earns a devotion that endures beyond fear, beyond circumstance. Anger blinds the mind to proportion. A single slight can eclipse a lifetime of loyalty. A careless word can erase years of kindness in an instant of rage. Jung saw in this the shadow, the unintegrated fragments of the self that demand projection. When you rage, it is not truly the other who offends you. It is the wounded part of yourself, screaming for recognition. To master anger, then, is to descend into this shadow, to acknowledge your own fragility, and to make peace with it. For only when the wound is recognized can the scar cease to dictate your life. The Stoics practiced this descent through reflection. At the end of each day, they examined their conduct as a general reviews, a battlefield. Where was I provoked? Where did I surrender? Where did I remain firm? They sought not to punish themselves, but to sharpen themselves. This is shadow work in its most ancient form, to bring light into the dark corners where anger hides, to own the parts of oneself that feel small, insecure, or unseen. In doing so, the sting of insult loses its grip. The shadow no longer cries for projection. It stands integrated, quiet, resolved. Even modern science confirms that those who master their temper enjoy greater resilience, better health, deeper relationships. Chronic anger raises blood pressure, corrodes the heart, damages the immune system. It is not only the soul that burns when anger reigns, it is the body itself. To govern anger is not merely a philosophical choice, it is an act of survival. And yet the path is not denial. To suppress anger, to bury it, is only to disguise poison in a golden cup. The Stoic does not pretend he feels nothing. He acknowledges the flame, but chooses whether to feed it. He speaks slowly when others shout. He acts after reflection, when others strike in haste. He responds not with denial, but with mastery. This is why Epictetus taught, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In that reaction, all of freedom or slavery resides. The man who learns this becomes untouchable, not because life spares him insult or betrayal, but because insult and betrayal cannot seize his mind. He becomes the mountain unmoved by storm, the fortress unbroken by siege. His anger does not vanish, it is transmuted. It becomes discipline, resolve, unshakable presence, and those around him feel it. They trust him, follow him, love him. For they know his peace is not fragile, his patience not counterfeit. They sense that in him lies a power far greater than rage, the power of self-possession. Anger is the most seductive of illusions. It whispers that if you let it speak for you, the world will respect you. But in reality, it steals respect, and in its place leaves only fear and distance. A man ruled by anger may intimidate for a moment, but he inspires nothing lasting. His household grows quiet, not from harmony but from dread. His friendships dissolve, his children carry scars, his partner learns silence out of self-preservation rather than love. And when the fire subsides, he stands alone in the ashes, wondering why others retreated. The Stoics understood that the world will never spare you from provocation. Life will test you through insult, betrayal, incompetence, even cruelty. But the test is never about the event, it is about the response. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act according to their limited understanding. They harm, not from divinity, but from ignorance. To rage at them is as senseless as to rage at the storm that rains upon you. The storm does not conspire against you, it simply follows its nature. And so, too, do people follow their ignorance. To understand this is to disarm the poison at its root. Psychology calls this reframing, but the Stoics called it wisdom. When insulted, you can tell yourself, "This diminishes me," or you can tell yourself, "This is the noise of one who does not know better." The power lies not in silencing the world, but in mastering the interpretation. Every shift in perspective weakens the chain of temper, until anger becomes less an eruption and more a fading echo. And yet, to the man untrained, restraint feels unbearable. Fury rushes through him like a tide. To resist feels like drowning. But with practice, resistance becomes easier, until calm becomes natural. Think of the soldier drilled to march under fire, who no longer flinches at bullets because he has rehearsed the fear out of his body. The Stoic drills his soul in the same way. He imagines insult, rehearses composure, and thus becomes unmovable in reality. Calm is not accidental, it is forged. The transformation is visible to all. A man who has mastered his temper does not need to announce it. His presence carries weight without raising a voice. In the marketplace, he is not baited into quarrel. In the home, he disciplines without humiliating. In the workplace, he asserts without shouting. And because his composure cannot be bought or stolen, those around him feel the gravity of his being. They trust him with authority, with intimacy, with loyalty, because he cannot be shaken by the ordinary storms of human folly. Jung would say this man has integrated his shadow. He no longer projects his insecurity outward as rage. He has turned inward and made peace with it. The reflection that once provoked him is now accepted as part of himself. In that acceptance, no insult can stab as deeply. He has met his own weakness and transcended it. The Stoics would call him virtuous. Modern psychology would call him individuated. Both would agree. He is free. So ask yourself, when anger rises, whose chain will you wear? Will you let the world pull at your strings, dragging you into eruptions that wound your dignity and corrode your peace? Or will you choose the harder path, the path of restraint, the path of silence that unsettles the aggressor and strengthens the self? Each decision builds or breaks the fortress within you, and when you are gone, how will others remember you? As the man who erupted, leaving scars in every life he touched, or as the one who stood unshaken, whose calm became a refuge for others? Legacy is not built in grand speeches, but in moments of provocation, in the way you answer the fire. To master anger is to master the memory you leave behind. Anger is a fever of the soul, rising quickly, consuming fiercely, and leaving the body weakened. What begins as a spark in the heart often becomes a wildfire that devours relationships, opportunities, and health itself. The Stoics warned that no man was ever harmed more by another's insult than by his own angry reaction. For what can another do but speak words, cast looks, or act in ignorance? But when you give anger the reins, you wound yourself more deeply than any adversary could. Think of the countless moments in history when fury destroyed what patience might have preserved. A single sharp word has ended friendships decades long. A hasty blow has turned disputes into blood feuds. Leaders have doomed nations with decisions made in temper's heat. And yet, the opposite is also true. The leader who pauses, the parent who speaks calmly, the lover who resists the urge to lash out. All of them preserve bonds that rage would sever. They transform what could have been fire into the warmth of light. This is why the Stoics placed such emphasis on expectation. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings reminding himself, "Today, I will meet with meddling, with arrogance, with deceit, with ingratitude." By rehearsing these encounters in advance, he dulled their sting before they arrived. What could anger do to him if he had already accepted in his soul that the world is imperfect and men act from ignorance? To expect the thorn is to avoid surprise at its prick. You too can practice this. Prepare your mind each dawn for insult, for chaos, for disobedience. When they come, you are not ambushed, but already armored. Anger thrives most when it finds you unprepared. Like a thief, it enters through doors left open by surprise. But when expectation closes those doors, anger finds no entrance. Modern psychology confirms this. Anticipating stress inoculates the mind, reducing the shock of conflict and granting the space to respond rationally. The Stoics intuited this centuries before science gave it a name. Their daily mental training was nothing less than the forging of psychological resilience. Yet this training is not cold detachment. It is not about extinguishing emotion, but directing it. The Stoic does not become numb, but disciplined. He feels the sting, the heat, the pull of temper, but he observes it, names it, and chooses his response. It is mastery through awareness. Jung would say, this is integration. The shadow of anger is not denied, but embraced, no longer an unconscious tyrant, but a conscious servant. What was once wild becomes harnessed, and the man who once raged becomes the man who builds. This mastery radiates outward. In the household, children feel safe to speak without fear of eruption. In love, passion flourishes because it is not poisoned by volatility. In work, colleagues respect the man who does not break under pressure. And even enemies grow cautious before one who cannot be provoked, for they cannot predict him, cannot bait him, cannot own him. To master anger is to become untouchable. And what of the self? The man who conquers his temper finds peace where others find torment. He no longer carries the burden of grudges, no longer poisons his nights with rehearsed arguments, no longer wastes his years replaying moments of offense. His time returns to him. His energy, once scattered in eruptions, is focused on creation, discipline, growth. Anger consumes, but mastery multiplies. This is the essence of Stoic freedom, not to escape insult, but to escape enslavement to insult. To live as one whose soul is his own, whose temper does not betray him, whose dignity cannot be stripped by the careless acts of others. It is a freedom the world cannot give, and therefore cannot take away. Anger, left unchecked, becomes an inheritance you never meant to pass down. It shapes the atmosphere around you, stains the memory others carry, and teaches those who love you that peace is fragile. Yet when anger is mastered, it becomes a source of quiet strength, a reminder to all that storms may rage, but the mountain does not bend. The Stoics saw anger as a corruption of reason. They urged men to ask themselves, in the very moment of provocation, will this matter tomorrow? Will this matter in death? Most grievances dissolve under the weight of time's perspective. What today feels unbearable will, in a week, be forgotten. What today ignites fury will, in a year, seem trivial. To rage, then, is to chain yourself to shadows. But to remain calm is to see with eternity's eyes. And in that vision, all insult shrinks to nothing. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom in the practice of detachment. To step back from the emotion is not to deny it, but to widen the lens. You see the other not as an enemy, but as a flawed human bound by their own wounds. You see yourself not as a victim, but as an agent who can choose. The Stoics called this the view from above. Imagine your life as seen from the stars, every quarrel small, every offense temporary. From such a height, the impulse to rage dissolves like mist in sunlight. This height is not aloofness, but clarity. To live without anger is not to live without passion. It is to redirect passion into what endures. Fire can burn a house to ash, or it can forge steel into a sword. The difference lies in mastery. The same energy that erupts in rage can, when disciplined, become resolve, creativity, courage. Many men waste their strength in temper, leaving nothing for the battles that matter. The Stoic gathers that strength, guards it, and spends it only on what cannot be destroyed by fury's waste. Ask yourself, how many hours, how many years has anger stolen? How many moments of intimacy were shattered by words you wish you had swallowed? How many nights of rest were traded for endless replaying of offense? Life is short. To waste it on rage is to bury your gold in the ground and call yourself poor. Seneca warned, how much better to heal than to seek revenge, for a return of injury wastes time and offers no profit. The modern man still needs this truth. Revenge does not restore peace, only restraint does. When you refuse to be provoked, you deny the world its control over you. You show that no insult, no betrayal, no act of disrespect can make you abandon yourself. That is the essence of Stoic freedom. To be self-governed, immune to the hooks others throw into your flesh. To walk among men as one who cannot be baited, cannot be owned, cannot be dragged into the mud. The calm man is not passive. He is untouchable. And from this calm grows a new kind of authority. The angry man may win attention, but the calm man commands respect. The angry man may terrify, but the calm man inspires. The angry man may dominate the moment, but the calm man endures in memory. In every field of life, in family, in love, in leadership, the choice is always before you: to burn or to build, to erupt or to endure, to leave scars or to leave a legacy of peace. The Stoics would say, choose the path of mastery, for it alone cannot be taken from you. In the end, anger is always an offering of power. Power you hand away freely. Power you will never reclaim. Restraint is the refusal to give it. Calm is the refusal to be ruled. And peace is the prize reserved for those who guard their soul as fiercely as a king guards his crown.